And so some housekeeping items as we get into this Workset A celebration, and so many of us are logged into the Zoom, is this helps us in identification and connection. Is if you haven't already done so, go ahead and add your organization or your institution name to your name in Zoom. And you can do that by moving your cursor over your profile or your avatar in Zoom, and then there'll be a little set of 3 dots. If you click on those 3 dots, there'll be a drop down and you can edit your display name. Please also ensure that you are on mute, and then please feel free, because this adds to the environment of what we're doing today, is use the reaction button. We've got an applause reaction, we've got a thumbs up, we've got hearts, we've got all different types of reactions, so feel free to use those. And then ask questions. That's what the chat is there for. That's a way in which we're going to interact. Because there are a few of us on stage here with the Zoom this afternoon, we're going to try to respond and react to your chats as best as we can. We appreciate your interaction there this afternoon. So let's just dial in by doing a little bit of a pulse check. Since this is a really good time of us really reflecting upon Workset A, and we're on a Thursday afternoon here in December, can you give us a quick pulse check? Like, how are you feeling in the moment? Whether if you're in person at Luna Community College right now, or if you are dialing in remotely from somewhere else, can you just type in the chat how you're feeling? All right, the answers are coming on in. Thanks for getting us started, team. Excellent. Two. All right.
Not in yet.
And here's what I'd like to bring up about pulse checks. Wherever you are at on this pulse check, may later this day and may later this week find you in even better places. If you are a 1, may it find you a 1+. I don't know where you go beyond 1. If you're in some other number, I just wish everyone well as we're doing the pulse check right now. So thank you all for plugging in your pulse check numbers. Now, from time to time, we're going to engage in polls. And one of the activities that we will get into is really reflecting upon how we are able to engage with a specific degree of polls and how we're able to get some answers and some feedback as part of interaction with one another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the first big poll. And the first big poll is going to relate to what you consider to be a major accomplishment of Workset A. So we went from Workset A in June all the way to the end of November. So that's a lot of work, that's a lot of meetings, that's a lot of interaction. So I'm interested in knowing from you, as you type in a quick answer, what is a big accomplishment of Workset A? So for everyone who's dialing in, I just launched a poll. Go ahead and take a moment and type something in real quick. And then get into that submit button if you would, please. I'll give you a quick moment to be able to do that. You've got a short answer that you can plug in. And I can just feel the typing, I can hear the typing.
Oh.
The answer is on in. And then anyone who's just coming in, I'll give you about another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're going to end the poll right there. And so we've got a lot of different comments just coming on through, and I appreciate that. I'm noticing things such as objective completion, great teamwork, collaboration, being complete. And this is something that I'm happy to share as we engage in more communication. But I just wanted to share with you a few different results that we've got in this engagement. And thank you all for typing in your quick answers as an icebreaker. So we're gonna have a few here as we ensure that we are engaging with one another in this Workset A celebration. So thank you all for that reflection. And now what we're going to do in continuing on with our Workset A accomplishments So I want to go ahead and share my screen again. And so it works at A accomplishments. Now that we've been able to specifically reflect upon how we define specific accomplishments, let's now transition over to some wow moments. Now, if you're joining this Workset A celebration and you're a part of our project team, something we want to really ensure that really captures some real positive moments of all the work that's been done is focus in on a few testimonies of work that's made a big impact. So, wow, would anybody like to share who's aware of this acronym? What does it mean? Looking for a raised hand. What does WOW mean? Does anybody want to take a guess, or maybe somebody knows in the room?
World of Warcraft.
Good guess. It stands for Wonder of Workday. So what we're going to have a few individuals from some different work streams come and share some impactful work. I'm going to stop right there and make sure everyone's on mute. Thank you. And so where we're going to begin is with a wow moment from student core and cross-functional team. And I am excited to welcome up Karen, who is our team lead.
Hello, colleagues. I'm so glad to see everyone in person. We're going to have a fun day today, I know. So I was brought into the project a little bit later than others. And looking at student core and cross-functional, we lost a member of our team, so I stepped in. So there's been a whole lot of discussion over the last few months about where each of our institutions are currently with our legacy system and where we're heading with Workday. So I'm excited. I'm thinking that this will do it. There we go. To talk about one of our pivotal moments when we all realize we can do a whole lot more with a lot less time. And so this is going to be one of the big impacts that we have experienced for this 6-month period. So moving to automation, moving to educational tests where maybe we don't necessarily have to have a piece of paper that we have the student go and take to the instructor and take a test and write their score on it, manually bring it back to the, oh, how many of you have done this in your time? Yeah, I'm seeing you. Okay, so you understand all that. By the time it gets to records and registration or whatever your office is called, the registrar's office, maybe we're talking about having to hand enter the score, hand enter the course credit, hand enter something else, and then maybe scan, or back in the day, filed. You remember. All right, so we won't have to do it that way anymore. We're excited because this is going to upgrade all of us to an automated digital footprint where we're going to be able to do all these activities, or most of these activities, depending on how we set it up, in Workday specifically. So think about not just your AP and your ACT exams, your CLEP exams. Think futuristic. Oh, wait, maybe I'm jumping ahead. Credit for prior learning. How many of your schools do that? Yeah, we all do a little bit. We might be going a little bit more in the future. So hopefully in the future, we'll have PLA or CPL, depending on what you call it at your school, also available with rule-based scoring. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what this looks like in the tenant, because I think the more we touch the tenant, the more we actually start to learn what it looks like and how to navigate it.
Wait, can you repeat that last sentence just one more time?
Something about touching.
The more we touch the tenant,
the more we're familiar with its capabilities, the more we learn how to navigate it, all the little unique, let's see, what's it, a Twinkie, a drop down arrow, what else do we have? Got a whole bunch of things we.
thank you very much. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I love that. Thank you.
You can pay me later.
Yeah.
So here's an example. When we were doing some of our fun with our student core and cross-functional team a few weeks ago, we got to create some tests for fun. And so this one I made up, which was hockey fun. Like, we're really going to have hockey in college. Well, some colleges do. Maybe not in New Mexico, not much. And it might be kind of hard to see, but here we have view education test. You can see if you were to squint really well that I built this particular course with a code. I can say that the minimum score and the maximum score possible on this exam, on this test. And then what happens if we give them a non-numeric? What would show up on their record? In this case, instead of being, college credit or an actual course, in this case, we're saying they participated or maybe they excelled. So we get to navigate and have not just scores show up, but maybe particular verbiage that will show up on the student's record for non-numeric scores. So this is the test. When we come to this screen, we see a student and, oh, I forgot, I got a little arrow, maybe not so much. So I blanked out a lot of the PII just so that we could share today. But this is a real student in the Chess 9 tenant that I said is going to take this exam or has taken the exam. And so down on the student actions on the left-hand side, I went all the way down to external records and I'm going to add a test result because I found out that he took this exam and we could do this through email or through any other methods that really work for us. But in this case, it doesn't matter. I'm choosing which exam he took, which was the Hockey Fun exam. He actually had to net, a hat trick. Some of you know the reference. Okay, we entered the specifics all on one screen. I think Carrie mentioned that yesterday, that some of the fun is that we don't have to go through a whole mess of different screens. So here I'm able to enter when did the test exam take place? When did I receive the results? What section? We actually have I was able to enter a score of 82, please mute, thank you. And in this case, it already notified and is putting on his record that he excelled in Hockey Fun. After entering all this, I would click OK. And now we can see that we've got that on his student account. So there is a button here for initiate transfer credit evaluation. We don't have anything else for the next steps built just yet, but they're coming. And so if by taking this test, he was able to get college credit for something else, then we'd be able to continue this thread of information. And so with that, coming down the line for our future that we're looking forward to is where we'll be able to put rules to say when a student receives, say, a CLEP. And how many of you offer Spanish CLEP or accept a Spanish CLEP and they might get a certain score and get one course, but if they score higher, they get 2 courses or maybe even 3 courses. So we can build rules that will allow students to be able to receive that automatically based on the rules we set. And that is our wow moment for student workforce.
Powerful moment. Thank you so much for sharing. And so now that we've had our first wow moment of the afternoon, we're going to transition over to another wow moment. And this wow moment is going to come specifically from Student Records and Academic Foundation. And so would you please join me in giving a warm welcome to Bernadette?
Everyone. As mentioned in our work stream, we did a lot of foundational build. So a lot of policies went into place. We didn't capture a wow moment of the credit for the I'm a little bit nervous. Yeah, sorry about that. Enrollment credit unit policy. And so that's what I'm going to be covering on the slide. I'm just coming over bronchitis, so I don't want to have a moment where I inhale wrong and I go into a coughing attack. So I created a slide with a voiceover. I think we're going to get that started. So. Nice one here.
What are enrollment credit limits? This is the number of credits students can enroll for in a semester and may also include the minimum number of credits a student can drop from. The importance of enrollment credit limit policy is to ensure balanced student workloads and academic success. So why implement enrollment credit policies, limit policies? One, it helps maintain a balance with course loads. Credit limit ensures students don't overload themselves with too many courses in one semester. This can prevent burnout and help maintain a balanced academic workload, allowing students to focus and perform well in each course. It also ensures timely graduation. If students consistently take a balanced number of credits, they're more likely to meet graduation requirements on schedule, which benefits both the student and the institution's overall graduation rate. Equity and fairness. Enrollment credit limit ensures fairness in course registration by preventing some students from taking an excessive number of classes, which may deny others the opportunity to enroll in necessary or desired courses. We also have to keep in mind of the student's well-being. Overloading on courses can lead to stress, anxiety, and a decline in academic performance. By limiting the number of units students can take, colleges encourages them to engage meaningfully with their studies without being overwhelmed. Also think of the student's academic success. With fewer units, or credits in this case, students have more time to devote to each class, increasing their chances of succeeding academically, performing well, and retaining information better. And in addition, they can keep their compliance with financial aid rules. Some financial aid programs require students to maintain a full-time enrollment, a specific number of credits, but not to exceed a certain number. Unit limit policies help students meet these requirements without risking their aid. Overall, enrollment credit limit policies help colleges promote student success, manage resources effectively, and create an equitable academic environment. Key components of enrollment credit limit policy is students can register for 18 credit hours at SFCC. Anything over 18 hours requires permission, special permission from the Director of Advising and Registrar. Special populations such as our medical assisting cohort can complete a certificate in one semester by taking 27 credit hours. I was happy to learn this is no longer a manual process. In Workday, we can adjust the credit hour limit by cohort if necessary. The next two slides are screenshots from our Workday tenant. Here we're looking at the maintain enrollment credit hour limit policy for Santa Fe Community College. In this slide, we are looking at enrollment appointment credit and open enrollment credit rule set. International students at SFCC have a minimum credit of 12 hours and a maximum credit of 18. The line below is for all other students with a minimum of 0 credit hours and a maximum of 18.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And we've got another wow moment coming to us from the financial aid work stream. And I'm very pleased to welcome Ryan on up to the stage. Come on up, Ryan. Later.
All right, so there's a running theme, right? We're all pretty happy about Banner, the way it organizes information. You have to go to Slim Didymifer and then some random screen with random numbers and letters to get from screen to screen and place to place, right? And we're all kind of tired of that, it seems. I noticed that theme through many conversations, right? And so for us, action items, which is in the raw rec screen, right? Which depending on if you're in the back end or the front end, it's two different names. And sometimes if you're talking to someone who doesn't know what screen you're going to, they're like, hold on. What the heck is a raw rec? And you're like, well, okay, here's how it's spelled. Type it in, you got to find it. And what I really like about these action items is that everything's kind of right there. And it makes sense and it flows and like, you want to have a cup of hot cocoa with it. It's like, it's nice, and you don't have to jump out of this screen to go into that screen. You're like, and then you alter, you're like, okay, now I got to go back to this screen. It's easy to flip back and forth and make complex adjustments simple, right? So for us, the FAFSA, the ICER is run on comment codes, right? And so comment codes, I think it's Crystal can, or someone who's smarter than me. I think it's like 7 different screens to make sure that everything talks and that you can post to a student's account and that it all runs properly, right? It's like 2. It's 2. It's nice. And so it's that one, right? And so then you click in the button that says, hey, this is the one I want to play with, right? And boom, you have comment codes and you can then go over, well, we don't actually have access to it, though they won't let us play with it yet. But, you can go in eventually to the ICER comment codes and make adjustments on the fly, I think, and you can see right over here. Like, you can see, like, it's right there, like, that's the comment code you're looking for. And I'm pretty dang excited about that. And so as one of the quartet of business analysts in our department, and most of us deal with that kind of stuff, we have a whole team, and that's because it's difficult, and now it's not going to be difficult, and that's cool. So wow, World of Warcraft.
I'm gonna have to ask my folks on the aisle to perhaps slide out of the way for a moment. So, we have collected our chess superstars. So welcome, Chester. Yes, it's a blow up. It's Chester. So we invited Chester to help us with our Chester Award. These are individuals who were nominated, one from each college or our chess and workday organizations. For their So the Chester, come down. They were, they were nominated by project peers. So these individuals were nominated by those on the project. They were selected by our review committee, also known as our project champions. We have one recipient per organization, and these are the folks that exemplify our CHESS values of collaboration, honesty, equity, sustainability, and student success. So, drum roll. I think I'm doing these in alphabetical order by college. Terry Smith. You gotta pause for a photo with Chester. Who's taking that photo? I'm pausing for a photo this way? Super cute. Our next recipient from CNM is Lisa. We will be having one of your comrades bring this back for you. This is our Chester, so you can have and to hold and love and cherish. All right. So next from Luna is all right. Chester Award for SFCC is again, Norbert, thank you for all of your work. I will be having this delivered back to SFCC for you. Next up on the list from SJC. Smile for all the cameras. All right, so after we acknowledge all the colleges, we also have two more. So for our chess.
Hey, Leah.
Our last Chester for Workset A, but certainly not least. Shaheen, would you come up, please? Thank you for all of the hard work that you guys have done for these, and thank you, Chester, for joining us today. Yeah, Chester, can we get a photo with all of the award winners really quickly? That would
Yeah, someone can find Aaron Barnes to be in the photo.
So you can get all the award winners.
Right in front?
Yes.
Don't stand.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, here, yeah.
I will not kill with that one.
Wait a second.
Stacked on.
Oh, we're gone at the end. Okay, all right, you guys ready?
Okay, I would like to invite Dr. Carol Linder to come up and say a word if she would like. A word of closing, a word of welcome. whatever you choose it to be. No pressure, no pressure. But really, I was getting you up here. So we would like to thank Luna Community College
Thank you
for hosting us this, did you just take the? Alright. Okay, so thank you from us to you for being such a marvelous host. And I want to give a special shout out to Leslie and Sal who have been. Fresh coffee, fresh bread, also the items right here.
We're really happy that you were on our campus this week, and it was great to see everybody here. And I'm just excited about the project and all the work that you guys have been doing. And I started out a little over a year ago and was on a team, and it was really exciting. And so it's exciting to see how far you've come. And I really appreciate everybody's hard work. And safe travels back, and I hope you enjoyed Las Vegas.
Thank you. Give it a minute to troubleshoot. Can you guys hear us now? All right, and I'm gonna hand it back to Henry to introduce us to a couple more fun questions.
All right, thank you, Mindy. And just as an activity through Zoom already, this is gonna be activity number 2. So if you give me a moment, I'm gonna go ahead and take us to our next poll, which is going to relate to superpowers. Maybe you've thought about this before and you thought, I have just one superpower. Now, in the poll I'm going to release, there's a list of superpowers. You get to choose one. And I'm interested in just knowing just how you think about superpowers. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to pull up our poll related to superpowers, and you'll be ready to go. And I have launched the poll for superpowers. You've got a list of 5 there. So I'm going to give you a moment to pick which one. Is it invisibility? Is it superhuman strength? Is it teleportation? Is it shape shifting? Is it time travel? And I'm noticing your answers are coming on in. They're coming fast. 63 of you have answered. I'm gonna give you about 5 more seconds to plug in that answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end that poll. And let's see how we all did. Okay, look at that. Teleportation. My goodness. To be able to go from one location and be somewhere else of your choosing next. Very good. So now we've got another fun question for us to also be able to consider as we are making our way through these polling questions. Now, I'd like you to imagine yourself being stranded on the moon. There are 3 things you can choose to have with you on the moon. Now, this is interesting, being stranded on the moon. You've heard of being stranded on an island, perhaps, or being stranded in some location that's remote. But the moon, what on earth do you do with that? So, no pun intended. So, with that, let me go ahead and see how we handle this question.
Are people considered things?
Are people considered things? Well, let's see what the list has to say. And so.
Can we read it?
Oh, let's go ahead and I'm gonna launch this moon poll here in just a moment.
Yes.
Go back. And then launch the moon poll. Here we are. So you get to choose 3 things. There is your list. What would you choose? What would those 3 things? There are some interesting answers up there, such as parachute or life raft. Right. Andy, I know your space in your comment. Yeah, I'm gonna give you 5 more seconds and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2, 1. Oh my goodness, so much thought, so much thought. Well, I'll let you finish that thought. Okay, and then I'm gonna end that poll. What are the results? Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing maybe we all want to stay alive somehow. So food concentrate supply, 92% of us voted that. Oxygen tanks came at 93. Notice the distribution for the rest because you did get to choose 3. So a lot of you, quite a few of you chose the spacesuit repair kit. That would seem helpful because if you're in space, it might tear, I don't know. And then lunar map for navigation. That was something that I was researching as a thought as I was considering it. It's like a lunar map because you need to know how to get your way around the moon perhaps. And then first aid kits, signal mirrors, parachutes and life rafts. So parachutes and life rafts came in last. And think about the ways each one of these items can be used. And so now we've had a chance to get into some fun questions. I'm going to turn over to someone who isn't an astronaut suit, wasn't a Chester suit just a moment ago, and share with us about, as we continue to consider Workset B and looking ahead, I'm delighted to welcome up Erin Barnes.
This shape.
I showed up, I didn't see it, but thanks everyone. Give me just a second here to get signed in.
Question is, how did you change so fast?
What was that? How did I change so fast? Love
He
it.
may have picked the superpower of teleportation, so it teleported from one suit to the next, one presentation to the next.
Just waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
Eric, can you pose her your twin?
What twin?
That one.
Oh, that one, yeah, sure. Let's just show this. I just, there's something here that's important to share with all of you. That, this, right here,
It's not an owl.
it's not an owl. Number 2, some of you, many of you know that we use Slack internally at Workday. And we also recently, we had an opportunity, there was always an option to do custom emotes, right? Like the smiley faces. And so someone in the audience, Susan, put a proposal in and it was accepted. This is now a custom emote in the Workday Slack. And Workday can use that. It's not embarrassing at all. Yeah. Yeah, we got the chess logo in too. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for mentioning that.
Would you like me to stop sharing?
If you stop sharing, I can get a share on here. Thank
Great.
you.
Sure, thank you.
So we're gonna do a couple things here today, and I was out of the room for a minute, so I don't know what was discussed about the schedule, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the validation in terms of where we are before we talk a little bit about Workset B. Someone who was in the room directly at 1 o'clock, did we talk about the validation timeline yet? We have not. Okay, so thank you for that. That's exactly what we want to talk about. So let me share out here. But I want to talk a little bit about where we are. Talk a little bit of the progress that y'all made today, but most significantly, I want to talk about what we're going to do in terms of a new deadline. So those of you who are here this morning online, thanks for joining again. We had a conversation about tomorrow being end of day being an unrealistic deadline, given where we are so far, given some of the challenges we saw on earlier in the week, and also given just the volume of work that you got ahead of you. We also acknowledge both now and on a continuing basis, just how much work you're doing at a detail level in the validation work you both from a data and a configuration perspective. So not only is that appreciated, that validation is the priority, right? The quality over the speed. To that end, I'm bearing the lead here. We've all determined, with all of the CHESS PMO combined, the work stream leads, input from some others as well, that next Friday, the 13th, by the end of the day, is when validation needs to be complete. So when we extended the deadline, we took a number of things into consideration, including some of the things that I'll mention on the board over there in a moment. But we want to say that that is the deadline. We don't have a provision to extend beyond that. We hope that it was generous enough so that it doesn't need to be moved again. However, we also understand that working together collectively, there's still a bit of a hill to climb here. So there are three components to that, three considerations, and I think one we get to cross out here. I'll ask Judd for verification in a second. One of those is that we still have a conversation to have early next week, perhaps, when we all get back and get rested and refueled on our store of nuts. The life cycle testing, we need to figure out how to layer that in. In other words, we don't want to wait until all validation is 100% complete before starting any life cycle testing. So we should be on data and verified validated configuration of the tenant that we can start some life cycle testing. Perhaps very targeted, as long as we feel comfortable, as long as we've got progress where it needs to be on validation. Also, we have a conversation that I think many of you have had in your breakout session this week, that the historical student data, being where we are with that this week, we will have some verification and validation to do on that, on not necessarily a rolling basis, but as that gets loaded for the colleges, we'll ask for some review there. That should be, I don't want to say simpler, the volume is larger, but the checking there perhaps can be something that we talk about next week as well. And Judd, this is where I'll ask for your verification. I think we've cleared this up. How many in the room remember 2 weeks ago when we were still using the proxy ID for students in the test tracker? Okay, we're in a place now where we should no longer need to do that. Is that a correct statement, Judd?
I believe that is the case. I would rely on some other folks in the room. I see Nina shaking her head, which is good. I've got a couple champions in who are involved in that group, probably knows a little bit about it, but I believe we've cleared the last remaining hurdle that prevented us from using student ID as the designator for test cases and that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that.
Speak now for everyone's piece.
And one of the reasons and one of the really significant reasons that we want to acknowledge that is that we did not load the proxies into the Workset A tenant as a result of this being the destination. So we don't have those IDs in the tenant anyway. So having this route is in fact the route that we'll take from here on out. Progress wise, here's where we are today. We've seen progress made. And again, I think this is Vanessa and I talked earlier with some of you. This doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture because we do have some of that in progress work that otherwise isn't represented when it's taken from the staff. With that said, I want a little bit of feedback from the core cross-functional academic foundation records and curriculum management advising team to see really when we walk out of the meeting that we're in right now, what a next step is and what you plan on doing with your teams next week, because I know that's a little different. Is it okay to transition just to ask for what the plan is there for next week? Yeah.
So we will be, next week, we pick up our, back to our normal meeting cadence, that we did the Workset A, so we'll have those 2-hour sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Next week, across my team, Claire's team, and Amber's team, we will be adjusting our agendas to dedicate that time to validation. So if you were in those work streams or whichever work streams you were in there, that Zoom, it'll be similar to what we're doing here. We'll sit on that Zoom, we'll have open time. If you have a question, just ask through the Zoom and we'll help troubleshoot. We'll be a little different than troubleshooting since we're not in person, but just know we will have that dedicated time for you all next week. Just a call out specifically, and Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, but the cross-functional sessions, those 1-hour sessions on Monday and Wednesday, those will remain as whatever topics are already planned by that team. It's just the core sessions on Tuesday and Thursday that will be dedicated to validation for that workshop. So just let me know that. And do not work on it.
Yes, that's in a serious way, right? We do not expect that there's going to be a continuation of work on the weekend. So thank you for that. Given the metrics here, given where we are, sure, 60% to complete, but again, there's some nuance in the files there. I just want to hand it to Vanessa very quickly. Vanessa, is there anything that you would put out to the group either for a statement of progress or to talk a little bit about any questions that you may have for the audience here?
No, I'm all good. Overall, thank you guys so much for your dedication. I know there's a lot of records being validated and everyone's working so diligently. So just reach out to Antoinette and I if you have any questions. And we are in our testing room all day, but happy to jump around into other breakout rooms as needed.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that. Vanessa, if you will stop the screen share. 10 or so attempts is a charm. I'm back into Google Drive. I'm going to share out my screen and we'll talk a little bit about the high level timeline. We'll talk a little bit about Workset B. And then we'll conclude by talking about what comes next. Right here, right. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. All right, thanks for your patience, everyone. So we took a look at this yesterday, and I want to just talk about two things that we haven't really talked about yet in relation to the timeline for where we are. We're still here. We're still at the start, right? First week here of our work. We'll have some conversations with you next week about our sprint cadence and how that's going to change based on some conversations that we had this morning. We do need to account for your end of calendar year holiday breaks. And so we're going to talk to you about that. We're going to have a little bit of a skip and a hitch, but we will start our next sprint a little bit off cycle this coming Tuesday. It gives us 1 2-week sprint almost before the break, right? So we've got a little bit of time there to get some work done in the sprint. What I do want to say though is over the next 1 2 3 4 5 6.5 months into the middle of June, you'll recognize that that's about where we were in the summer of 24 when we cut from our plan stage into Workset A. That work for us is critical, number one, into building the Workset B tenant, and number two, into getting to a place where you have a higher degree of comfort with all the things that you have done so far, the configuration that you've built, all of the test scenarios that you've written, all of the unit test and lifecycle test scenarios that you've compiled. And then beyond that, all of the work that you're going to do to build into testing and to have an additional set of knowledge transfer throughout the next work set. We haven't talked much on this project about what sits below the line, these business function milestones. So by the way, if you haven't seen this before, these business function milestones for us are a little different than a standard project. I'm going to mention that because business function milestone 1 and 2 is something that in Workset B, we will start to talk to you more about, right? So here we have way over here in the fall of 26. These functions here that represent for us the first set of go live activities, the first time that you'll be in conducting business, that your students will be in the tenant. For this project, not necessarily unique, but unique for CHESS in some ways. For all of your institutions, we've combined, these are normally split and sequenced in a different way. We've combined these first 2 business function milestones. This is important for you to know, and it's important for you to start to talk about within your work streams in Workset B, because this is where you'll start to get a feel for not only what goes live in the fall of 26, but what needs to be configured to build for that. So we've talked to you a lot about the 0 starting point over here in foundation tenant build into Workset A. We bring data in, we get a baseline level of configuration so we can look at the system. What we're going to start talking about now is what's it going to take for you to conduct business, to bring students in, to have a live system for your MTP1. Now, a lot of that builds over time, but we want to make sure that you're also prepared for that same cyclical testing activity and some of the same validation for Workset B. With that, I'll switch over to our architect and configure stage. we're going to revisit something that we talked about earlier this year. When we started architecting figures. So remember, it's pop quiz. At least I didn't quiz with the information on the screen this time. How many work sets do we have? Thank you, Julia. Appreciate it. This is why my wife would be like, don't do, you can't ask it that way, Aaron. That's why I'm not a teacher. We want to talk a little bit about the big three, A and C stage big three, not work set A, but for the whole stage that extends through the end of work set D. This is important for us to keep revisiting the principles here, these big three for us, those things that we're trying to get through, not necessarily goals, but the areas of focus, the iterative design. Talk about that again in a second. Configuration, unit testing, lifecycle testing. We will continue that process. We'll talk more about test preparation and execution. We'll dive a little deeper in the next work set into lifecycle testing. And then you'll hear us start to talk toward the end of work set B, not for work set B, but for work set C about customer confirmation sessions. So just plant that seed for yourself. Customer confirmation sessions, who not in the Workday team has heard of customer confirmation sessions or remembers them from another project? No? Okay. So Ruth, was that you? Okay. I won't put you on the spot, Ruth. So customer confirmation sessions are the wow moments, but more. It's not where you're showing a group like this necessarily, you're showing a wider group of colleagues, the things that you build in the system. That's not the end of work set B that will come for us in work set C. Keep that in mind because what you're building now is something that you'll get to show toward the end of work set C. Test preparation, execution, and then finally, the one that we haven't talked to you a lot about until this week is the CHESS tenant ownership. So let's change that a little bit. I'm going to change the language on the slide for the next time we talk. So it says CHESS member college. We'll list those out. The ownership that you all will take in, the ownership that you'll all increase for the tenant. And I think not just in saying, here, take this, own it, but the sense of ownership that you'll feel as we work through this work, right? You'll start to feel very attached to what you built. You'll also start to walk away with, if you don't feel it yet, and you may not, sense of pride for what you've been able to assemble and making the transition from what in most cases is a decades-old legacy system. So with that in mind, I want to bring us back here. There's something that we, as it relates to the MTPs, just want to highlight. MTP 1, when does it come again? Looking at a Workday person in the room go, I don't know. That's not, man, I think we need to restart the week. MTP 1 comes. Fall 26, thank you. Appreciate Zach's got it. Great, thank you, Zach. So look at this. By the time we get to the end of work set B, 90% of what we need configured for MTP 1. And I won't go back to the other slide deck to those business functional milestones, but that's a lot. There's a lot there. We're gonna get it done. You're all gonna get it done. We're gonna work together to be successful with that. And then we talk about MTP 2, but not quite yet. There is something here that as it gets into work set C, into work set D, that we haven't spent a lot of time yet. You may have heard that this life cycle testing that you are perhaps right now somewhat painfully helping assemble for yourselves puts us in a place to say life cycle tests, built from unit tests, life cycle tests, then feed into end-to-end testing that you'll see us talk a little bit more about for you at the end of work set B. I'm going to zoom in a little further on work set B for us. So, by the way, that's a footnote. It's not B squared. I don't like that, but that's what it is on the deck right now. Here is work set B with a little bit of a zoomed in view. if you remember, and we won't go through this today in detail, we have a diagram, timeline like this, a visual, if you will, that can be represented from a project perspective for just about all of the suites of roles and responsibilities of the project. I show you this one, not because every one of them is a project manager or engagement manager, but because it does start to talk a little bit for all of you about things like the customer readiness review, about some of those ANC stage testing presentations, about some of those items that are finalizing our life cycle test scenarios. And if I go down a little further in this same deck, and we drop into Workset B, zoomed in view for functional, you can start to get some different suites of detail here. So the thing that I want to highlight for all of you is that these artifacts, these links, these tools, everything here just about links over to community, no surprise. This is where we have an increased expectation for everyone in the project, all of you from the member colleges, to have a little more time spent getting familiar with what is community, where to find resources, where to empower yourself, and also in some ways, right, dip your toes in the water of engaging with other customers as well, and thinking about what they're doing and how they do business. Not to necessarily inform the implementation, but it's never too early to start building your network for the work that you'll have ahead. Also, want to highlight here that for the functional consultant slide on Workset B, we talk a little bit later on again about some of those discovery decision guides, Workset playbook we revisit, and then we talk a little bit more about the system of record. And then we talk a little bit more about some of the other confirmation decisions that you actually presented to us from earlier this year from before we even started our architecture computer stage. So everything that you built for us, not only do we build on it, we reflect it back to you, and then we continue to come back to those materials to say, hey, is our starting point where we built to, where we configured to now, is this still accurate? And on a project of this length, when we think about Workset B not even ending to the middle of June of next year, we want to revisit as business changed, right? And on top of that, the last thing that you'll see, and I don't know that we've got it noted here, but many of you, of course, know that we have semi-annual releases that also applies to Workday student. So at some point in time, we start to talk about regression testing, but more importantly, what functionality is out there that we want to consider for uptake either during or most likely after the implementation. I've got one more slide to show with Vanessa's face on the screen. I think this is highly appropriate. Sorry, Vanessa, you are on the big screen here. Like, it's the biggest profile picture I've seen in a room so far on the project.
So pretty.
Repeat that so Vanessa can hear it.
It's so pretty.
There you go. Thank you. Just find a way to make sure that doesn't happen. If you remember from 30 seconds ago, the other slides that you saw, the functional testing, if you remember what was on those slides, you didn't see as much text. And there's a reason for that. This is where we start to, and by the way, this is only slide 1 and 2 for testing. Workset B is where the testing, if it doesn't already, start to feel more real. But it's also where you get to feel empowered to create better test scenarios, to have more information, to have more grounding and understanding of how the system works, so that we can end up in a place by the end of Workset B, when we start to talk again, about the unit test and then the unit test execution and lifecycle testing once again, you're in a place where you have a stronger feel for that ownership that you mentioned earlier. And then also a better, let's say, foundation for building your test scenarios going forward. We have for us those MTP countdowns, particularly MTP1 on the left-hand side. We'll talk to you a little bit more about what that looks like, and we'll start to focus a little bit more as we talk to you about things like the rate queue and about items that are otherwise exceptions to the work that we do from an implementation perspective, and about some of the statuses, shouldn't be on the screen, some of the statuses and some of the ways that you can help to take ownership of where we are from a project health standpoint. So I don't want to skip over for all of you. that where we are on the project now, of course, isn't where we're going to be in 6 months. It's also not where we're gonna be in 2 or 3 months. And with that, I want to acknowledge that in the coming weeks, it's going to feel like we're rushing to end the year, like we're rushing a little bit perhaps, and I want to make sure that you all know that we've got a measured plan that we're building. A little bit of it's on the board right there for getting us through the next few sprints. You can see that we talked this morning right up through just about the beginning of February. We'll continue to talk to all of you about what that looks like going forward in the lead up to what looks to be another on-site event potentially sometime in Workset. And when we talk to you about that, we want to make sure that we're not just talking to you about progress and objectives, that we're just talking to you about how we're building toward a tenant build. We also want to really emphasize for all of you that this is the place where, given your increased comfort over the coming weeks and months, you come to us and say, this feels like something we're not doing, or this feels like something we need more of, or this feels like something where I can point to something and quantify where I think we get this right, or where I think we may be headed in the wrong direction. And one of the reasons for that is Workset B, like we got through at a burger for lunch, we got through the layer of the bun, right? Top layer, that's Workset A. Now we're diving into the protein in the middle. For me, it's beef, pick your own. And that's Workset B. We get through that work, not just together, but by being open with with each other, project-wise, cross-institutionally as well for all of you. I want to ask a question that is a little bit unfair because I know the answer for some of you. How many of you at the Chess member colleges, so working team, no hands yet, or at all? And this applies to all of you remote too. How many of you before the Workday project started, before students started, have worked together in a cross-college way, admissions office to admissions office, registrar to registrar to college? How much of that, how many of you had done this work that wasn't just a phone call to say, how's the weather over there? A little bit? Okay. Is that, Andrea, is that like a?
Yes.
Okay.
State organizations here, so.
Okay, excellent. So that's good to hear in many ways. Now you're all working toward the same goal in the same system. And I think that the emphasis there is that you've established relationships on the project. Some of you came in with pre-existing relationships that you're leveraging different ways to build to some success for the work that we're doing here. Just want to pause there. Do we have any questions about what's coming as we conclude this week? Because I do want to touch on just 2, maybe 3 administrative things before we kind of step away for the day and transition to what's next. And remote audience, anything that you'd like to bring up as well, validation related or otherwise. We can also tell you how the food truck was really good. It's like, Aaron, just get out of here, come on. Unified meeting schedule, I want to point you all to this. We're having conversations in the PMO. I suspect that just about the time that you're all off for your holiday break, we'll have a unified meeting schedule that takes us to a place where you can say, one-stop shop, all the meetings on the project. Where can I look for those? What's the schedule? What's the cadence of those? What should be here? I mention that to you because what we're trying to do and continue to try to do is when we see the switch over to Workset B, we'll continue to have these Zoom links here, we'll continue to have some of the work stream notations here. If you go right, you see some more attributes. This is important because one of the things we heard consistently this week and throughout Workset A is I really want to make sure I know what's going on in another area. I want to understand what the topics is. We'll do our best to solicit that input actively when we know it requires cross-functional involvement and not just for the cross-functional work stream. This is also going to be a place though that you can go to look for agendas, to otherwise then go and say, hey, this is a topic that I'm interested in. But don't want to imply in any way that you have to source that on your own. We're going to try to do better at that. So that was one piece of feedback and one sort of logistical item to point out. The other thing that I wanted to highlight today is that for those of you who are otherwise unfamiliar with or have not yet delved into the rate queue. And by the way, who has used either the form or directly to enter a rate queue on the project? Yeah, okay. A lot of PM hands, a lot of Workday hands. Want to say that for all of you, This is something that we as a PMO have committed to revisiting in Workset B in a slightly different way with a different focus. Because some of the collected aggregate feedback that we got through Workset A is, hey, I submitted this a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago. I see some status updates, but where is it? What's the conclusion? Judd is absolutely a proponent of constant grooming of the rate queue. And he reminds us of that, and we had a conversation here this week, just to reflect back to you from some of the PMO conversations, that we appreciate that in some cases we haven't met your expectations for sharing on what's going on with the rate queue items as you've submitted them. Finally, OCM, here you go, change impact tracker. Jay talked about it a lot. Henry talked about it a lot. Julie, yeah, raise the roof on this one, Julie. So this one is, for us, more important in Workset B than it ever was in Workset A. This is the place where you start to see these changes in Workset B, where you start to anticipate what might be an impact for your communities at your colleges. You'll want to get this in here. The worst thing to do is to have an idea and say, I don't think that that's something they want to consider. Give them something to consider. They don't necessarily need more work, but they want to be able to have everything to go through for that OCM team. This is important for us, and we've had some conversations as a PM team with the OCM team. Collecting these now gives time to respond to them in Workset B. It's not the end of the runway at Workset B, but Workset C, D, and later on probably gets a little harder to try to address these, or to assess the impact, or to otherwise adjust, create content that might help in determining what can be otherwise adjusted for that. Yes, Debbie.
So I had a conversation with some of our OCM people, just to get some clarity on this, because I know they're not seeing as much of a response on this form as they wish they would. And one of the things that I was told that I didn't realize is, if you do all these steps and you're getting rid of one little tiny step, that goes in this. So if you're getting rid of one little tiny step, that's a change that needs to go in there that the OCM needs to know about. Doesn't matter how tiny the step is, please use the tracker. So that's one thing that I didn't realize.
Yeah, let me double down on that. You'll notice that one of the things I like to do is look towards the end, right? Always have the end in mind. That change impact tracker is going to be a big input to your syllabus planning for training at the end, your end user training, right? When you're telling the end users, hey, this is what you need to know about this new system. A lot of that plan is built from what's in this change impact tracker. So the implication of that is next week, 2 weeks from now, probably already a month ago, we didn't have something in the change impact tracker. And now we have to remember to put it in training, right? So it's very important, especially where we're starting right now. I've seen other projects that start at this point, really, get into it. You need to start tracking stuff that's changing. You think, oh, that's different than what I do today, big or small, it doesn't matter. Put it in there, the team will evaluate it and figure out, and they may say, hey, we're not gonna mess with that. But if you don't put it in, you know how fast we'll move it. And the thing that you saw last week and didn't put in, we're gonna blow right past it. And what it turns into is we're training people with an individual picture of what they need. That's why this is important. That's why we're not gonna stop talking about it. So everybody's job in here is the change in background.
Thanks, Judd. Yeah, and that, yes, enough said. Good job. So I've run at the gallery here. I am gonna hand it back over to Henry. Those of you who have worked with us we went through this yesterday for either a few months or nearly a couple of years now, understand that we do our level best to make ourselves always available to you as a consulting team. And we do want to say to you that that continues to be the case. We also want to make sure that for all of you, as you approach in just a few short weeks here, the time period where you get to exercise some family time, some time away from work, we're highly respectful of that. And we don't have any plans to take any of that time from you. In fact, we want to make sure that you get that time. We might do a couple things in the background here and there, but for all of you, you'll see the work stream meetings. They won't happen during the weeks that you're off, right? We acknowledge and respect those calendars. And then we start the new year really into Workset B. We know we've got a few weeks here, so I don't want to say that we aren't here, but we've got a couple of set of operations. We've got 1-2 week sprint, and then that 2 week sprint actually ends on Christmas Eve, so we're not going to do much there. But then in the first week of January, we're gonna start to roll back in. We also know that January is a busy and odd time for your schedules, acknowledging that as well. So these are the things logistically that we'd like you to keep feeding us. And of course, never assume that we know. Always say, hey, did you know we've got this day off at our college? Did you know that we've got this happening? Did you know that we've got whatever event? So appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for a wonderful week of validation. Judd's got something to say.
Oh, I need just a minute or two before we close.
Is that,
Okay, if you want to take a minute?
Aaron, can you real quick bring up the objective slide for this session?
yes,
Because that's, I think, if not,
I don't think I have that slide actually.
I know what
Was
two
that-
of them were. So
was
look
that-
ahead for work set B. Check, right? Y'all feel like y'all have a pretty good sense of what's coming? Well, I know one of those objectives was to validate work set A tenant. That's something I want to spend some time talking about. Just to reiterate and emphasize what Aaron mentioned a moment ago about, hey, yeah, we didn't make it another week. I want to talk through how we think about that. Right now, we have a pretty wide margin for making stuff up, right? If we were, one of two things that happened, we'd be having a very different conversation. If we were at a hard stop next week without that tenant validation, we wouldn't be saying have a great weekend. We wouldn't be about to eat cookies and the squirrel soup would probably stay in the box, right? But the reality is we don't have a hard stop on Monday, right? We can continue on. We're not stuck. The other thing is, just so you guys know, when I'm talking to our consulting team, who know a lot more about this than I do, they're very pleased with the status of your tenant, right? If we were seeing a whole bunch of stuff, we'd be having a different conversation. So the margins right now are pretty wide. So that week that he talked about, next week, okay, yeah, we can afford a week. I just want you guys to get ready for, when we're approaching the end of work set D. So about 12 months from now, we're locking in the end-to-end testing. That margin gets very slim. So what this is about is setting the expectations for tightening up in work set B, tightening up again to a very tight margin work set C. And then you think about MTP 1 or 2, you don't want to start telling people, oh, I'm sorry, it's not Monday, it's next Tuesday. I was wrong about that, right? So that's just so you guys know. And along the way, we're getting the practice that we need to be better and be able to hit those tighter margins. So just throwing that out there for context, big picture, we're in great shape. Just imagine how, last thing I'll close, when we built and validated the foundation tenant, how late were we? Anybody remember?
3 weeks.
About 3 weeks. We were 3 weeks late in validating. We didn't start validating the tenant until about a week after we thought we were going to. So progress towards the performance that we're looking to, right? That's what this is about. It's not perfection day one. It's about growth. That applies to everything. That applies to change impact tracker, applies to your comfort level in the tenant, applies to your fidelity and attention to testing and understanding what that means and how to apply it. All of these things, you guys are in great shape, growing towards where we need to be. So that's what I wanted to close with. Thank you.
All right, let's give work team a round of applause. Aaron, special thank you to you for the many roles you played in our session this afternoon, and Judd, thank you for the comments as well. And as we have spent this afternoon celebrating work set A, getting some details, transitioning us into work set B, I would like to, before we go to a break, have some celebratory comments to help wrap us up. And with us right now, I'm very pleased to introduce to everyone on the remote Zoom joining us and everyone live here in person, our CHESS CEO, Kathy Woolybuddy. Kathy, thank you very much.
Some really good things about what's happened here over the last few days. And I just want to first thank you. Thank you for being here and for all of your hard work. This project will be a success because of all of you. And I'm immensely grateful for all the effort you're putting in. I did get a summary of some of the outcomes of the Workset A debrief, and I want to tell you what I heard. And if I've missed something, I want you to let me know. So I heard there's some things we should continue doing. We should continue our weekly emails. We should continue pushing the transformational mindset. And I'm really glad that made the list, because what we want to do is really knock it out of the park for our students. And we don't want to just lift and shift same old practices. We want to really transform so that our students are wowed. You all are enjoying the Chess Connection and the fun events that we do along the way as well. I also got word there's a few things we should be doing differently. You all want to see more hands-on how this product works. You want to see more of the demos, and we're going to be looking for ways to incorporate that in. And Judd knows, and Aaron knows, I'm really interested in connecting you all with some colleges that are live on Workday, so that they can show you how they're using it and might inspire some ideas. And we'll love to connect you with that. And you'd like a crosswalk of glossary terms, wouldn't we all? And that's really difficult because we're coming from different systems, but really important so that we're all speaking the same language, and a calendar for due dates. So, what we should do next, I'm hearing that we should expand the audience for bi-weekly spring meetings. So you all want more people involved, longer and more detailed onboarding processes, demos again, and resources around the features within Workday Student. So what did I miss? That capture
More Chester.
more Chester? I hear there's a photo of Aaron floating around. All right. All right, so how's tenant validation going? How are you feeling about it? Was it what you expected? Andrea's going, I'm scared. No, it sounds like you've made good progress with that. And it sounds like we're on track. That's what I'm hearing. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of all of you and the hard work you're doing. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you all for being a part of this Workset A celebration, Workset B introduction. What I'm going to mention to everyone joining us on the project team, thank you for being with us for this afternoon. You are welcome to be dismissed. Those of you who are joining us from the project team, originally not part of this event. Well, for everybody who's joining us, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back for some additional details and also some closing and anything else we feel like we need to wrap up. Anyways, joining us from the project team, you're welcome to stay if you'd like, but just know we're going to transition us to a break, give us a chance to stretch a little bit and reflect. And thank you all for being here. And one last thing, our friends from Workday, for those who are on site, got us some cookies, got us some food. So it's sitting out on the counter out in the foyer. And so thank you very much. Judd, Aaron, team, we really appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. See you in 10 minutes. Right.
Yeah.